Really super excited to have Jennifer Finegold on with us.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, everybody. Yeah, so we are here today. We're going to talk about acupuncture because Jennifer Finegold is a L.A.C. CHT, has been practicing Chinese medicine for over 10 years and specializes in 5 elements, which focuses on healing not only the physical, but mental, emotional, and spiritual aspects of an individual. The elements are based upon nature: fire, earth, metal, water, and wood. And, we have the same idea, the same concept in shamanism, that all of these elements are what we're made of. We're made of these things. We're made of earth. We have a body, and we're also spirit. We're also this thing that animates all this wood and fire and water and makes it move and talk and think, and so
Yeah.
yeah. So let's talk a little bit about your background, because I know I'm actually not sure I know your story of how you got involved with acupuncture. I've known Jennifer for a long time, years. I don't even know how we met, but networking or something. And
Yes, at a networking event.
yeah, I have known you for years. So tell us a little bit about your journey. Like, what got you started with getting into acupuncture? And then we want to go right into like the benefits of it that you see.
Yes, for sure. Well, to simply put, in 2002, I got into a car accident where my pelvis was fractured in 3 different places. And at that time in my life, I was really getting into the power of the mind and visualization and things like that. And in getting into this accident, at the time, the doctor tried to tell me that I may not be able to rollerblade and do all these things that I love to do. And I didn't want to accept that in my consciousness. And I was bedridden for over a month. And so I decided to put, the power of the mind to use, where every day I would imagine my pelvis recalcifying, coming back together, seeing myself doing the things that I love to do, to be active in things. And sure enough, I healed twice as fast, let's say, as the average patient. And my doctor was really blown away. And that's really what led me on my healing journey. So from that point, I started studying the power of the mind and hypnotherapy and things. And in that journey, I learned about EFT, emotional freedom techniques, which is where you tap on certain acupuncture points to help release emotions and things like that. And it worked so well for me and the patients that I used it on, that I was like, wow, there's something to this, acupuncture meridian network. And that's what led me into acupuncture.
That is awesome. Because I also got introduced to acupuncture through, a personal challenge in my life, more mental health and some physical health. Because at the time, the physical challenge was actually sciatica. And sciatica is
Mhm.
a big one people come in for
Yeah.
acupuncture, because that's a sign that there's emotional issues generally, because it's your lower back and your hips.
Yep.
And it was on the right side for me, which you start to realize, oh, that's the masculine. Well, of course, I'm having issues there. So
Hmm.
I love acupuncture in the way that it operates. So I like it because it sort of deals with your whole being. And when I say that, I mean it's a modality that deals with your subconscious, your emotions, what you're saying is the issue, and then the way your body's responding. It's like all of these different. It's holistic. It's not just like, let me take your temperature and give you a blood test. Like, it's
Yep.
so refined is, I guess, the word for it for me. So tell us a little bit about what you have explored, what you notice about acupuncture as a modality for healing.
So a lot of times when patients come to me, and as you mentioned, with your own experience with sciatica, I tell a lot of patients, if not every one of them, that a lot of times pain will manifest physically from repressed emotions. So, anytime that we experience trauma or even just everyday stress and things, and we don't release it and move it, it can collect within our cells and our memories and our meridian network. So acupuncture is really based upon the premise of establishing balance or homeostasis in the body. So the easiest way to describe it, let's say more in Western terms, is that our body has these a central nervous system, all these nerve networks throughout our body. And they found over time and even through studies that there's these points located along our nervous system that when activated with the needle, send signals to the brain, which has a cascading effect on the body. Because essentially that's what's going on all the time anyways, is that our brain is constantly sending these impulses and messages throughout our body, right? So when I do points, for instance, for relaxation, it triggers the brain to create more serotonin or dopamine, those feel-good neurotransmitters. So acupuncture really helps in establishing balance in a plethora of ways by sending the correct signals to the body and the brain so that they work cohesively.
And then your body and your brain, when you return your brain to, when we get our system out of fight or flight
Yes.
and we relax the nervous system, then the brain actually can start healing the body, which is what's happening during an acupuncture session. Like you're sort of tapping into the right points where there's maybe blocked energy
Yes.
and helping the body to relax. And so talk a little bit about that people might not understand what I understand. Like I understand when you're tapping into a channel, you're putting a point there. You've basically identified a channel that is blocked, that like there's energy that flows through that channel and it somehow got blocked and it needs to be unblocked. And by putting the point in there, you let it unblock and the energy starts to move. But I know I just explained that, but like I just explained it from Kerri Hummingbird way of talking about it, so maybe
Yes.
you have a different way.
For sure. In Chinese medicine, we say that, disease or imbalances can be caused by stuck qi or energy or even blood. So the way that I describe it to patients is it's kind of like, a highway system where, as you know, living in Austin is like majorly jam-packed, right? So what can happen is through, concurrent stress, poor diet, or even external factors such as accidents and things like that, within our network, within our nervous system, it's like, a bumper to bumper traffic. So things are just stuck, things are not moving, and you can like feel it and it manifests in different ways. So acupuncture is kind of like the policeman or the ambulance that gets through and begins to get that traffic moving again. Or you can see it too in the realm of, streams on a mountain, for instance, when it starts collecting and building up because of obstacles such as rocks or things like that. You want to remove the rocks, remove the obstructions so that there's a free flow of water again. And so really that's what acupuncture is all about, is the free flow of qi or blood.
Yeah, and I think that people don't realize, at least I'm starting to realize it more and more and more, the negative impact of stress in our lives. And it's sort of like, I think that you can retrain your body and your brain to have a more peaceful way of being, but it takes time. And acupuncture, to me, is one of those tools that you can use to give your brain an experience of something that's calm and soothing, so that it's like a baseline, like it has a new baseline for what is normal, like
Yes.
what could be normal. And if you're someone who's had a lot of PTSD or trauma, I know from personal experience, you're creating that for yourself over and over and over again because your brain has those neural pathways
Yes.
to create a baseline of stress. And so when you're operating at a baseline of stress or a baseline of anxiety, or anger or grief or depression or whatever that is, then in order for you to be able to get out of that, you've got to actually be able to experience something different than that. And for me, acupuncture was one of those first tools that let me experience something different than that stress model.
Yes. And that you're absolutely right on, and that totally makes sense. And it's true, when we can get caught in our own habits and patterns of, operating on a certain level of consciousness or way of being, whether that be depression or victimization or anxiety and things like that. But once you heighten your consciousness, and especially through acupuncture, it helps to kind of alleviate that veil, let's say, then you begin to experience, wow, okay, I can actually feel loose and free in my body, and to really experience life on a different level.
You know what's interesting, Jennifer, though, is that a lot of people, when they get into a stress situation or a stress response,
Hmm.
the response is to kind of curl up and like hold the energy, like
Yeah.
like to actually hold on to the pain and it's like this resistance to like opening it up,
Hmm.
right? And so do you see that a lot with your clients? Like when they first come in, do you see that? Or are they kind of at that point they're ready to like, okay, I know there's a block and I want to get rid of it, or
It really depends on situation to situation. There are definitely people that are aware of that. I think it comes down to awareness. Sometimes people don't literally know any other way of being, and that is kind of a primordial response is to like protect yourself and hold it in and things like that. So I have experienced patients that are in that state and that don't know any different until they experience something new, or I do have patients that are just in, let's say, a state of suffering that they'll do whatever it takes to release it and to feel better.
yeah, I think that was that one right there. That was the spot I was in when I started this journey feeling. I was like, okay, this is so much suffering. It's got to be better than this,
Yes.
which is why I was willing to just let go of all of it, like whatever I thought. Or so this is acupuncture is a really different model than like Western medicine. I mean, when you go into a Western doc's office, it's a really different experience. So it's describe in your words, like how you see the difference. Like what is the basic difference between those two modalities?
The basic difference I see is that, many times, if not most, in a Western physician sort of office, they're going to take your blood pressure, take, let's say, some of your vitals and things like that. And then you're going to tell them your signs and symptoms. And based upon your signs and symptoms, then they come up with the diagnosis. And most, if not all of the time, then they come up with, a treatment plan, which a lot of times incorporates pharmaceuticals. So it's strictly more from this physical level of how things are interacting in the body. And as far as Chinese medicine, we really see things holistically, where there's elements not only physically of what is going on, but also emotionally, mentally, and even spiritually. So during the intake process, usually an initial treatment can be anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours, because the practitioner will really delve into all of these different layers of an individual, from your diet to your level of exercise to how your sleep is to your digestion. And all of these things correlate to different organ systems of the body. And so from that structure, we are able to understand where the imbalances are in order to do points according to them to bring them back into balance.
And what I noticed during an acupuncture session is that there's that initial intake, and largely it's based on the part of our brain that does insight. There's a big component of the part of our brain that leverages the insight. The insight being different than facts and figures and let me check my memorized statistics, or let me look at my computer screen and see what things match this and let the computer tell me what it is.
Oh,
The
yes.
insight part of the brain is the part that taps into intuition, that just goes, oh, here's this other layer of information. And that also that there's a constant listening. I would characterize it as deep listening by the practitioner with the patient ongoing through the treatment. So it starts off in one place as we're listening, like you would listen to the pulse, for example. So I'll let you talk a little bit about how is listening really different between the Western model and the Chinese model.
So in that way, I think from the differentiation between the Western model and the Chinese medicine model is the Western model is, let's say, more assertive, or what would be categorized as yang in Chinese medicine, where you give them some feedback and they're on it, they're going to just make their diagnosis. Whereas Chinese medicine is a lot more yin, which is more of that receptive, open, insight sort of quality, like what you were saying. And so there's different diagnostic factors that Chinese practitioners use to understand where the imbalances are. So that's everything from taking the pulse to looking at the tongue to looking at the color of the individual to their energy and things like that. So, the pulse, for instance, it's not literally just listening to the heartbeat, but rather in Chinese medicine, the pulse is connected to different organ systems within the body. And so by listening to it and tuning into it as a practitioner, you're able to determine what may be out of balance in order to know what points to do to bring it back into balance. So for instance, one of the pulses is connected to the liver. The liver is the organ network that assimilates and processes and detoxifies everything that moves through our body, right? So that would be anything from alcohol to food to drugs, medication, things like that. And in Chinese medicine, the liver is the organ network that ensures a smooth flow of qi or energy throughout the body. And living in this day and time, it happens all the time where people get what's called liver qi stagnation, where the qi or the energy is literally pent up, and that can manifest as feelings of irritability, anger, feeling toxic, things like that. So in the pulse, when I listen to the liver pulse, that would manifest as feeling very wiry, almost like you're feeling like a guitar string, kind of like plucking back at you. So during our training in school, we learn, and of course throughout our entire practice, you learn to understand the different qualities of the pulse and what that may mean. So for instance, with the wiry liver pulse, I would know, okay, we need to soothe the liver, get the qi moving, things like that. Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
absolutely. I mean, I've only have experienced it as a patient, as a client, and I hadn't really had the other perspective of the practitioner and how you learn, but I intuitively know that you're checking me constantly. Like whenever I have a session, I know that person's tuning in because I see them come in again and they're listening and their hands are on my pulse. They're looking
Mm-hmm.
at my tongue. They're listening to my breathing. They're asking me how I am, what's going on for you now. And when they're asking me what's going on for me now, they're asking me like, what are you thinking about? What are you visualizing? What's happening inside of you? What are you aware of? Where does it hurt in your body? Like they're asking me questions like that. Like
Yeah.
it's very comprehensive, and all that stuff has meaning. And that's when I started realizing like my body, and they're proving it now, that the body is the subconscious. So the body holds your database of your lifetimes, because I'm a believer in that. We've had
Mm-hmm.
multiple, this is the first time I've been on earth, this is the first life I've ever had. Like you can't possibly conquer this in one lifetime. This is a big, powerful experience to be alive in a body. So I think that we just have to recognize that we're complex beings. We're not simple beings that can be, our happiness can be reduced to a pill.
Yes.
And even the fact that you're, during the session, it's like things are shifting even during a session, like
Yeah.
quickly, like within a 45-minute hour session, things shift multiple times, right?
Oh yeah. And that's what I call the Zen Zone. Most, if not all the time, when you're done with an acupuncture session, you feel so relaxed, so zen, because we sent the signals to relax your sympathetic nervous system. You don't need to be in that fight or flight mode. It's very therapeutic. And for those people out there that are listening, I just want to reinforce, I don't know if the masses are necessarily aware of all the things that acupuncture can treat. So besides just pain, it can treat insomnia, digestive issues, stress, PTSD, a whole slew of things that doctors can treat as well.
Yeah, and I want to say that the reason why Chinese medicine hasn't been as widely exposed to the masses has really been through a system of invalidating it from our governmental bodies. So, the United States, particular governmental bodies, has tried to invalidate Chinese medicine, and now is finally coming around. The FDA just approved it, not that long
Mhm.
ago, as an authorized, approved method and of treatment in the United States, even though it's a 3,000-year-old medicine path.
Yeah,
Path has
exactly.
been going on for 3,000 years. So thank you, Western medicine, for validating it now, finally, in your esteemed authority to say that this is an accurate treatment option.
Well, and that's what I tell a lot of my patients and always think about too, is in China, where most of the people live in this world, it's the first line of defense whenever you get sick. They don't just try to give you pharmaceuticals and things right away. They do, they practice acupuncture, they incorporate herbs, they incorporate cupping and all these assimilated modalities.
But I think there's there's a consciousness difference between Eastern and Western thought. And I think here's what it boils down to for me. Eastern thought sort of recognizes that life is going to be filled with experiences you can characterize as good or bad, and you can get upset about them or not. But there's going to be challenges, there's going to be things, it's going to be an ongoing experience of learning. Like it's just going to be that. And
Mm-hmm.
Western thought's kind of like got this idea, at least in the United States, like, well, a good life looks like this, and I can reach this state of perfection. I can just be like flatlining unhappy, you know?
Yes.
And that is a lie.
It is.
It's
It
a
totally goes
lie.
against the natural nature of the universe.
You know, things are going to happen to upset your apple cart on a regular basis.
Of
And
course.
then that's your opportunity to learn how to bring yourself back into homeostasis, into,
Mm-hmm.
to return your system out of fight or flight into. But if you've got this idea that somehow you're broken if your life isn't flatlining unhappy,
Mm-hmm.
then that makes you susceptible to think that you need to be fixed, which makes you susceptible to think that you need a diagnosis and a pill, which
Mm-hmm.
then leads you down this little path of identifying as that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a little interesting mind screw that's been happening in our Western society. That's
Yeah, it is. I always like to turn back to nature because especially with the five element component of acupuncture, nature shows us it's not summer all the time. You know what I'm saying? If it was, there would be utter chaos in our Mother Earth. And so through the cycles of nature, it shows that there's times when there's abundance, there's times when there's dispersion, there's times when there's scarcity. And that's totally okay. That's the natural flux and flow of life. And so I think anyone that has a perspective of thinking, oh, I need to be happy, happy all the time, that's totally illogical because it goes against the very nature of our being and about life itself. There's always going to be ups and downs, the yin and the yang of experience. And so it's a matter of tuning into that, being aware of that, and finding your balance in between.
Yeah, I love that. And I really love the five elements. So tell us just briefly about the five elements before we have a few more minutes. I know people
Mm-hmm.
want to know a little bit more about when you talk about the elements, like how does that relate to us and what does that mean? I know it's hard to give a total overview of it. Like,
Yeah, no worries. I'll give a brief synopsis like what I do with my patients. So essentially, it comes from the theory that we are a part of nature and nature is a part of us, right? So the five elements are fire, earth, metal, water, and wood. And each of the elements are associated with different organs and functions in our body. So each of us contain all of the elements, but some of them may be more predominant within our personalities more than others. So, for instance, someone like you, Kerri, you definitely have a lot of fire.
oh yeah.
You're fine, you got this handled, you have a lot of excitement, passion, and enthusiasm, and things like that. Whereas somebody who, for instance, has more water is somebody that's more relaxed, chill, go with the flow, things like that. So, for instance, in Chinese medicine, the water element is associated with the kidneys and the urinary bladder, the waterways of the body. So, being a practitioner, if let's say the patient is describing that they're experiencing imbalances within that area, that may manifest as a UTI, urinary tract infection, kidney stones, sciatica, because sciatica is actually the line of the bladder meridian up the leg. Or even on an emotional level, it may manifest in an imbalanced way as feeling stuck or stagnant or even depressed, like there's that lack of flow. So then when you do the water points as needed, it will help somebody feel more recharged in the flow, having faith, resources, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like to think of the fire that I have now, that I've had, has been very predominant over the last 8 years because I had a lot of water to burn up. You know what I'm saying? Like I had a
Mm-hmm.
lot of depression and stagnation and like
Yes,
heaviness, and so the fire element in me had to come forward so that I could kind of clean that all up and transform
yes,
it. Because fire is a transmutation energy. It transmutes one thing into another.
Yes,
It's a good ally if you got a lot of stuck stuff. Anyway,
it is for sure.
which is why I lead fire walks. I can't wait for my fire walk tomorrow because I got some stuck stuff to release. But
Oh, that's
at some
amazing.
point,
Yes,
you got to bring the water back in too. So I'm working on that. You know,
yes.
like a little too much
But yes,
fire.
a healthy balance of water is always good. They balance each other.
But see, that's the point. Is no set it and forget it. You go through phases and cycles. Like I've had a
Yes.
phase where I needed a lot of fire,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'm going into a phase now where it's like a balance is good. Some earth, you know, some water, some wood, you know, would be helpful, right? Because I've had a lot of fire.
Yes.
So it's kind of like you've got to if you can change your mindset out of the like set it and forget it and put it into the flow with this model, you can be more proactive about getting yourself where you need to be in any moment. It's not about getting it permanently stuck.
Yes, for sure. And I think it always comes back to, nature is our biggest teacher.
Sure is. Well, that was so informative. How can people find out more about you? Do you have a way for them to get in contact with you or anything you want to offer to them today?
Yes, you can always go to my website, www.fshealing.com. You can look me up online, Jennifer Finegold. And for anyone that's interested in an initial treatment and is watching, I will honor 20% off because I'd love for you to experience it.
That's so generous. Thank you so much, Jennifer. And it would be
Of course.
worthwhile, you guys, because she is very, very, very competent and good at what she does. I know I haven't personally gone to you yet, but I'm going to.
Awesome.
It's
Thank you so much
I'm
for
coming
hosting.
in for for a session, but I've heard lots of people that know Jennifer and are like, she's amazing. So you cannot go wrong with this experience. It'll be really good for you. Thank you
Thank you.
so much for joining Skills Not Pills and for sharing your wisdom.
Yes, for sure. Keep it going, girl. I'm so happy for you.
Thank you so much. Okay, everybody, have a great one. I hope you enjoyed
All
this and
right.
got illuminated.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Happy weekend.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.